Good afternoon. It is 12:12 p.m. on Sunday, November 20th, 2016. I'm Christiana Ellis, and I've been up for a little while. I've been screwing around, procrastinating sorts of things. Just, yeah, nothing terribly important, just messing around. But today is Sunday, and that means it is time for Avatar: The Last Airbender Rewatch. This week it is episode 13 of season 1, The Blue Spirit. This episode is a great follow-up to last week. Oh, my camera's all... There we go. Great follow-up to last week. Last week we got some backstory for Aang in terms of his new attitude about moving forward and trying not to be so hung up on, having lost the past. Although, as we see in this episode, that's easier said than done. But also in humanizing Zuko and establishing just exactly what it is that motivates him, the lengths he may be willing to go to, and what he really considers his priorities. And so that's important information to have in mind as we move forward into this episode. So, of course, we begin with some more world-building stuff and meeting up again with our not-so-good friend, Commander Zhao, Zuko's kind of nemesis within the Fire Nation military. And Zhao is trying to convince this general in the Fire Nation military that his unit of expert archers should be given to Zhao for the purpose of trying to hunt down the Avatar. And this guy is not on board with this plan. And so it seems at first like we're kind of smiling with satisfaction as this smug jerk Zhao is, getting told, we don't have time to spend these, elite military units on your vanity project. But then, just as they're standing there, conveniently timed messenger or hawk or whatever it was, delivers a message that Zhao is now Admiral Zhao. And so his request is now an order. It's also interesting just to have these expert archers within the show because, as we've established in the season so far, benders are quite adept in combat, or certainly can be anyway. And so it makes us wonder, it's like, well, how would anyone who's not a bender stand a chance? And the answer is that there are lots of people who are very skilled in other sorts of non-bending related tasks. And so these archers are certainly examples of that. We kind of also saw that a couple of episodes back with Jet, who is not a bender, but certainly held his own in single combat with Aang. But in the meantime, we flip back over and we've got Sokka and Katara. Sokka already sick, Katara coming down with something. Stated reason is being as a result of having been out in the storm, which I suppose is plausible. If they were, just stressed and weakened as a result. But, Katara is caring for Sokka, who is already delirious with fever, but she's starting to come down with something herself. So Aang is determined, well, we found this map. There's an herbalist across the valley. I'm going to go get medicine. And he concludes that the weather continues to look kind of bad, so he's not going to just go on his glider. And I'll briefly cover while Aang is gone, we get the kind of fun running gag of Katara trying to tell Momo, the lemur monkey guy, that go get us water. But he's pretty smart for an animal, but he is just an animal, really. And so there's just a fun little shot of, like, from Momo's point of view, and Katara is just going anyway. And so him continuing to bring back stuff that is not water including a crown at one point, and the whole cave is littered with all these just little random things that he finds that he keeps bringing back, trying to help. But so Aang makes his way to the herbalist, and it's a fun little sort of throwaway character in the sense that we don't expect to ever see her again, but she's just kind of, she's the old lady that lives at this little temple and everybody else has left, but she's still there, and she's just her and her cat, and she's a little crazy. And in fact, at one point, she, after, her various antics of making Aang wait and then not talking to him and then just preparing her cat's dinner instead of the cure that Aang's asked for, Aang's just like, you're insane, aren't you? And she goes, yep. But her advice, which is that they should suck on these frozen wood frogs that are down in the swamp. All right, that sounds like an insane person's idea, but, in the absence of anything better, Aang's going to go get some. But while collecting said frogs, the archers. The archers show up, and we get a great action sequence where they made an excellent decision to add some weather effects in. First of all, it ties back to the whole reason that Aang didn't just fly on his glider across the valley, but also the drama that resulted from these heavy winds sort of buffeting everything, and just the realization that these archers are being that accurate, even in the heavy wind. And while Aang is, certainly very skilled with his bending, we even see him end up using a little bit of water bending at one point, freezing it to block some arrows. But unfortunately, they are skilled enough and he is outnumbered enough that they are able to capture him. And this is something that we realize that it's almost a little bit more than them just being skilled. Part of the advantage that they're so skilled is that they can capture him alive. And we realize from Zhao something that we may not have understood before, which is that the Fire Nation needs him alive. It is absolutely unacceptable that the Avatar should die, because if he does, he'll just be reincarnated again. And then they won't know where he is anymore. If they have him captive, they can keep him off the board without having to worry that another Avatar is just going to grow up again out there somewhere. Maybe better hidden this time. And so that's a little ominous. It's kind of spooky. First of all, it's kind of smart. It's a strategy on the part of the enemy, which is nice in the sense that they don't feel like they're just bumbling idiots. It's also kind of creepy, the idea that Aang is going to be held prisoner, potentially tortured, but not allowed to die for the rest of his life, is certainly the plan. And yet, now comes we've been seeing little flashes of a mysterious figure dressed in black except for a blue and white mask, sort of a demon mask, who's been infiltrating this base and now proceeds to break Aang loose. And it's funny because I had actually forgotten in the first part of watching this episode who this blue spirit turns out to be. But, before we got to this point, we did see Zuko talking to Iroh and kind of despairing that Zhao as Admiral now he's got so many resources that Zuko basically has no hope of trying to find and capture the Avatar before him. And so that just means like this whole thing, as we saw in the flashback last time, Iroh talking about how finding the Avatar gives Zuko hope. That hope is slipping away, because if his only opportunity to try to recover his honor is to capture the Avatar, and Zhao is better equipped to do so and is likely going to snatch the Avatar out from under him, what's he going to do? Well, as we see during an excellent escape sequence where, again, it's not lazy. Like, this whole design of the fortress with several sort of inner courtyards and high walls that they have to get across, and having them get across the different ones in a variety of ways, having lots of setbacks, making it clear that this escape is not a trivial one. And them both, the Blue Spirit and Aang having their own share of, narrow escapes, cool moves, but then also setbacks. And then they get to the point where they've failed their last attempt to get over the last wall and outside. So there's dropped to just inside the outer gate. And this is where the weakness of needing, the disadvantage strategically of them needing to keep Aang alive, all of a sudden the Spirit holds the swords at Aang's throat. Because we can certainly understand that while Zuko's intent is not to kill Aang, we know that if he is desperately intending to keep Zhao from taking the Avatar, he would have to start his search all over again too if Aang were to die, but at least Zhao wouldn't have taken it from him. And so we don't know who's, if we're watching this, we've not had it confirmed yet that this figure is Zuko, but the threat of killing Aang is enough for Zhao to at least temporarily allow them to leave. But of course, he knows he still has these super accurate archers, and his intent, which he follows through on, is to use the archer to knock out just the masked figure and not harm Aang. But when that happens, Aang is able to bring up a cloud of dust to obscure them and then get away. And we see Aang feeling really conflicted in the moment, because he could easily just get away and leave the now unconscious Blue Spirit behind to be dealt with. And at one point he would have helped because this person is rescuing him, but now he's not sure because they threatened his life as a way to get out. So who is this person really, and what do they want? But then as he, pulls the mask, he realizes it's Zuko. That's even all the more complex, because he doesn't understand all of what Zuko's going through and what his deal is. All he knows is that Zuko's been trying to capture me all along for the Fire Nation. Why is he breaking me out of the Fire Nation fortress? And so he waits for, once he gets them both to safety, he waits for Zuko to wake up, and his commentary is just, I used to have friends all over the world, even in the Fire Nation. And do you think that if we had met in that time, would we have been able to be friends? And Zuko, unfortunately, lashes out with his fire because he's still not in a place where he can talk about that sort of thing freely, emotionally, that is. And so Aang just runs, able to return with the frozen frogs to Katara and Sokka, and the frogs apparently work even if they're really grossed out afterwards. But Zuko has to return to the ship, now knowing that the Avatar has escaped his grasp, but also away from Zhao, and at least as far as he knows, no one is aware that it was him who broke out. And we observed, too, during that whole rescue sequence, that he was very careful not to use his own firebending, lest there be suspicion. And so it's kind of cool, actually, to realize that that's how skilled a fighter Zuko is that even though he's primarily trained to use his firebending, he is able to be pretty effective even without using it. And it also, the fact that it's Zuko explains a couple of things. One is that he, as he was going through, seems to be very skilled at knowing how to fight firebenders. For example, his use of the bucket of water at one point to extinguish a fire blast directed at him, but also that he seemed to kind of know what he was doing in terms of infiltrating this fortress. I will give just a brief shout out to Iroh with his horn that he bought in a previous episode. And when he bought it saying it will be great for music night. And then so when he's greeting Zuko's return, he says, "You missed music night." And I just love that this is a running theme that this Fire Nation ship has music night. I think that's great. Anyway, Zuko, goes to bed, says no disturbances. Of course, he's had a hard night. But we've got some new complexity now, right? Like Zuko and Aang, their only previous meeting had been in the original attack on the Water Nation village. We'd seen them kind of only been able to encounter each other in dramatic conflict. But this time, even if only for a moment, and even if it was because of differing motivations, they were on the same side for a little while. And that's complex. And so we know that Zuko's got some conflicting feelings going on there, I think. Because we have to know that even if there's nothing in him yet that wants to see Aang as a friend, like Aang was hoping, just this idea that he is so determined to recover his personal honor that he was willing to act directly opposed to the interests of the Fire Nation as a whole. Because we can just imagine that, the whole idea of capturing the Avatar is to remove him as an opposition to the Fire Nation. And Zuko just allowed him to escape for the sole reason of being able to capture him himself. And so that, could be seen as a very selfish move. Certainly there are a lot of people in the Fire Nation who would think so. What his father would think is complicated, maybe, because, it's hard to know what the Fire Lord's sense of honor is really all about. Is he the type that really only cares about results and therefore would be infuriated by this? Or would he feel like the initiative and strategy shown by Zuko is worth rewarding? Hard to say. We don't really know enough about him. But we'll continue to progress and find out. So this was an exciting episode with a lot of good action and some really great inflection points in the arcs for both Aang and Zuko, specifically in relation to each other. Good stuff. Love this show. I love this show, you guys. It's so good, right? All right. So I will talk to you guys tomorrow for 5 more minutes, and next week for the next episode of Avatar: The Last Airbender.